Well, here's a shocker. The guy who got a Steam Deck is still talking about Nintendo Switch related stuff because I genuinely enjoy the system. That's why I talk about it. I don't understand why that's such a foreign concept. But if we're going to talk about foreign stuff, I drive a foreign car and my Giants are 4-1. That's not gonna age very well because the Giants are probably gonna lose everything for the rest of the season. But let me enjoy this moment. Let me have this moment. But obviously yesterday I made a video talking about the Steam Deck. I kind of joked around that I would stop talking about Switch stuff, but I never will. It's a system that I genuinely enjoy. I enjoy Nintendo as a company, but that doesn't mean that they're without faults. Every company has their own faults. Every company has their own drawbacks and their downfalls. And one of them that I'm kind of vocal about is the Nintendo Switch Online service, mostly the expansion pack side of things. Now, this was introduced and it was definitely a step in the right direction. Granted, you had to pay more money for it, but I think the features were good that were added into it because basically you had more consoles added into things. You had the Nintendo 64 and the Sega Genesis. Now, the N64 at first did have some problems. There were some graphical glitches in some of the games like The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, but Nintendo has come and fixed those issues. They've improved upon things, and for the most part, most of the games have been really well done. You know, games like F-Zero, which was a game that, you know, on the N64 it looked a little bit blurry. When you do these increased texture resolutions available via the emulator that they're using for this system, you get a lot more of a crisper image. It really breathes life into a lot of these games. Now, one of the newest games that was announced for the Nintendo Switch Online service is a game that definitely flies a bit under the radar. No pun intended. Maybe a slight pun. Maybe a slight, but it ain't a big pun. All right, R.I.P. Big Pun. We miss you. You can find me in the Cherry Red 150. Anyways, so the latest game that's been added, or that will be added on October 13th, is Pilot Wings 64. Now, Pilot Wings 64. This was a launch title for the system. Pilot Wings is kind of a weird franchise. It's kind of the outlier franchise. It's a bit of a weirdo is what it really boils down to. But I think I've always enjoyed the games, at least for what they were. Of course, Pilot Wings made its debut on the Super Nintendo. The N64 one, I feel like that was the one that a lot of people played because of the fact that, you know, with the N64 launch, there wasn't a whole hell of a lot of games. Of course, there was a Pilot Wings for 3DS as well. It's an obscure franchise. It's kind of a weirdo franchise, but I'm glad to see it's coming. You know, this is a game that I think flies under the radar, like I said, no pun intended, and a lot of people aren't familiar with it, and it's really a fun game. But there's been a discovery made about Pilot Wings 64 before it comes out. I believe it launches on October 13th, which is this upcoming week for the service, that has me sort of questioning, because I know what you're saying. What the hell does any of this have to do with Goldeneye? You literally are 3+ minutes into the video and you have not mentioned Goldeneye. Look, people, I'm telling a story. I'm weaving a tale. I'm making you believe in what I'm saying so that when we get to the Goldeneye stuff, you fully believe what I'm going on here. But let's talk about what's going on with Pilot Wings and then how it relates to Goldeneye. So this article is coming to us from Nintendo Everything. I'm not going to link it because evidently if you link stuff on YouTube nowadays, they will give you copyright claims. We saw it with Spawn Wave. I know Review Tech USA is having the same issue. So you know who Nintendo Everything is. Just go to their website. Go to their website and read them, since I'm using them as a sort of stepping stone here. But basically, Game Explain has made a comparison video to show the graphics, how they compare to the original N64 version. Now, what's interesting about this is, let's just read here. The biggest takeaway here is that on the Switch, the game runs at a mostly smooth 60 frames per second. That's a big step up from the initial release, which largely ran at 30 frames per second with some dips. Only the menus were 60 frames per second. Outside of that, this whole package is in a proper HD like the other N64 titles on the Switch Online. The only slight downside is that the in-game timer looks a little bit more wonky due to the increased frame rate. Now, I'm not gonna show their video. I'll let them do their own analysis. You know who Game Explain is. Just friggin' type their name in YouTube and you can get there. And of course, this game will be added on October 13th. So then once again, you're saying, well, that's cool. You know, that's great. But what the hell does this have to do with Goldeneye? And here's where I bring everything full circle, because when Goldeneye was announced for Nintendo Switch Online, you have to remember, this was unlike any other, literally any other game that has been announced for the Nintendo Switch Online service. All the other games have been done in a sizzle reel. Literally, Ocarina of Time, Super Mario 64, absolute banger titles for the system were revealed in a teaser trailer. You know, just a little sizzle reel, like, hey, these are the games that are coming, this, that, and the other. Goldeneye got its own pomp and circumstance. Goldeneye got its own big announcement after the sizzle reel. After all this was said and done, it was like, dun, 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 dun. And of course, everyone got excited. There's tons of nostalgia for that game. But when it comes to the nostalgia of that game, people have to realize something, that the game does not run great. That game does not run great. And, you know, it's definitely a product of its time. The frame rate can be downright atrocious, like low double digits, high single digits at times. So when this game was announced, I said, and you could find this on my tracker, and I was like, yo, I bet this is going to be a slightly enhanced version of Goldeneye. It's not going to be the remade edition or anything like that. But I feel like the fact that Nintendo went out of their way to sort of hype up this game, it means something a bit more. And people were quick to point out to me, well, it's just because the Switch version has online. At that time, we didn't know that the game was also coming out on Xbox. It is indeed coming out on Xbox. It does not have online multiplayer, which that's not something I had on my 2022 bingo card, a Switch version of a game having multiplayer online and the Xbox version not. But I said, you know, maybe, but I feel like there's something more with this. I feel like this will be a slightly enhanced version of the game. And when looking at Pilot Wings, now I'm fully on board with this. I almost expect it to be an enhanced version of the game, because if you're able to do this with something like Pilot Wings, a game that, you know, it ran fine. It wasn't necessarily a bad running game. It just, you know, games run better at higher resolutions. Why would you not do this with a game like Goldeneye? Why did they show it sort of as a special thing, but then not show any gameplay from it? All the other games you saw gameplay from. Think about it. Think about it. Every other game within that sizzle reel, it wasn't just a splash screen. You saw gameplay from it to sort of get an idea of how the game is going to look with the slightly, you know, increased, sharper texture resolutions on here. I'm not saying that this is going to be a completely different version of the game, but I think it's safe to say that the Goldeneye for the Nintendo Switch Online service is going to have increased graphics. That's point blank period. We see it with every freaking game that comes to the Switch Online. But the thing I'm concerned with is the frame rate. And I feel like the frame rate, if they're doing this with Pilot Wings, why wouldn't you do it with the game that clearly needs it, that dips into single digits within the frame rate? So I think that Goldeneye is going to surprise a lot of people. You got to remember, Goldeneye was technically coded originally with dual analog support. Most people don't realize that, but the N64 version is actually a dual analog support game. It was just, there wasn't a way to do it with the N64 controller unless you had two N64 controllers, and then you could do it that way. I expect this to have increased visuals, increased frame rate, and dual analog support. And then, yeah, so you can say, oh, you still have to play with your friends. You can't do rando stuff on Goldeneye. Whatever. You know what? I'm not asking for the world with this. I'm just asking for a game that looks better, for a game that runs better. And I think Pilot Wings is setting the precedent for this. If they're increasing visuals and they're increasing the frame rate and they don't do it for Goldeneye, that would just suck. But you got to remember, one thing to sort of bring all of this back to reality, much like my 4-1 Giants, which probably won't make the playoffs, is that this is Nintendo. And there is no rhyme or reason. There is no consistency with a lot of things that they do. Sometimes you see games that are great. Sometimes you see games that are crap. Sometimes you see games that are priced too high, and then games that are priced fairly. Some of the games that come out on these services are really good. Some of them are really not. So the lack of consistency definitely is looming over this. But all I'm saying is, do not be surprised when Goldeneye comes out and it looks better and it plays better and it has the option to do dual analog controls, and then be like, oh, nobody saw this coming, because I did. And if I'm wrong, I'll play it on my damn Steam Deck is what I'll do. I can put do texture packs on there and stuff. Leave me alone. But let me know what you think of this in the comment section down below. Is this a Stretch Armstrong reach? Because, I mean, it does sound kind of crazy. It does sound kind of crazy, but I think it's rooted in reality with this. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share. Hit the bell notification as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Go Giants. Go Knicks. Later.